وإذا أحد من ثبن حنبيم صاعق الهليشاع لمور. And one woman from the women of the sons of the prophets cried out to Elisha, saying, Abdaka Hishi met, thy servant, my man, is dead. Wahata yadata ki abdaka ha ya yare et Yahweh. And thou hast known that thy servant was fearing Yahweh. Wahanoshe ba לקחת את שני ילדי לו לעבדים. And the creditor hath come to take the two of my boys to him for slaves. ויאמר אליה אלישע מה אשלח. And Elisha said to her, What should I effectuate for thee? Hagidi li mahayeshalak babayit. Tell thou to me what there is for thee in the house. Watomer en lishipahataka kol babayit ki himahasuk shaman. And she said, There is not for thy handmaid anything in the house, if not a small jug of oil. Wayomer laki shahli laka kelim minaha host met kol shekenayik. And he said, Go thou, ask thou for thee vessels from the outside, from all thy neighbors. Kelim reqim al tama'iti. Empty vessels, thou shalt not make few. Wabat, and thou shalt go. Wasagarta haddelet ba'adek uve'adbanaik, and thou shalt shut the door behind thee and behind thy sons. Wayathak Al kol hakelim ha'el, and thou shalt pour upon all the vessels, all these vessels. Wahamale tasi'i, and the full one thou shalt remove or set aside. Watelek mehito, and she went from with him. Watisagora haddelet ba'adah uba'adbanaha, and she shut the door behind her and behind her sons. Hem magishim eleha wahi mothaqat. They were ones bringing to her, and she was one pouring. Wayahi kimilaot hakelim, and it was as the filling of the vessels. Watomer elbanah, also she said to her son, Hagisha elai od keli, bring thou to me yet a vessel. Wayomer eleha, and he said to her, In od keli, there is not yet a vessel. Wayamud hashamed, and the oil stood. Watabo, and she came. Watagedelehi shah Elohim, and she told to the man of the God. Wayomer, and he said, Laki mikari et hashemen, go thou, sell thou the oil. Washalami et nishayech, and repay thou thy debt. Wahatta wabanaik tihiyi banotar, and thou and thy sons, thou shalt live by means of the rest. ويحيى hayom ويعبر Elisha el Shunem, and it was the day, and Elisha passed on to Shunem, Wathama Ithagdola, and there was a big woman, Watahazekabo Lehekol, and she was prevalent with him to eat food. Wayahi midde abro, and it was as often as his passing, Yasur thamah lehekol, he turned to there to eat food or bread. Watomer Elahi Shah, and she said to her man, Hinne na yadati ki ish Elohim kadoshu. Behold now, I have known that a man of the God, a holy one, he is. Over alenu tamid, one passing by over us continually. Na'ashena aliyat qir qat'anna. Let us now effectuate an upper room of a wall, a little one. Wanashim lotham mitta washulahan wahisse umnora, and we would set for him there a bed and a table and a seat and a lampstand. Wahaya bavo helenu yasur tham, and it shall be in his coming to us, he may turn to there. Wayahi hayum wayavo tham, and the day became, and he came to there. Wayasar elha aliyah Wayeshikabatham, and he turned aside to the upper room, and he lay there. Wayomer el Gehazi naro, and he said to Gehazi his lad, Qarah lashunamit hadot, call thou to this Shunamit, Wayqarah lah Wata'amud Lafanaw, and he called to her, and she stood before him. Wayomer lo, and he said to him, Emorana Eleha, say thou now to her, Hinne haradat Elenu et kol harada hadot. Behold, thou hast been anxious for us with all this anxiety. Meh lashot lach. What is to do for thee? Hayesh ledaber lach elaham melech, or elashar hashjabah. Is it that there is to word for thee to the king, or to the prince of the host? Watomer betoka ammi anochi yothabet. And she said, in the midst of my people I am one dwelling. Wayomer, and he said, Wemeh lashot lah, and what is to effectuate for thee? Wayomer Gehazi, and Gehazi said, Aval ben en Allah, Surely a son is not for her. وشاهداقٍ, and her man is old. ويمر قرها, and he said, Call thou for her. ويقرها, and he called for her. وتعمد باباتها, and she stood in the door. ويمر لموعد هذا كائت حيا, and he said, For this appointment or season, like the time of life, at hovekat ben, thou shalt be one holding or embracing a son. وتؤمر على هذوني إشها Elohim ألا تكذب بشفاعتك. And she said, No, my lord, man of the God, do not deceive thy handmaid. وتحرها إثا وتلد بن. But the woman conceived, and she bare a son. لموعد هذا كائت حيا, for this appointment or season, like the time of life. أتردب برهلها Elisha, what Elisha worded to her. ويجدل هيالد, and the lad or the child became big. ويهي هيوم ويشه إلهابيو إلهاقوثريم, and the day became, and he went out to his father to the ones reaping. ويؤمر إلهابيو, and he said to his father, Roshi, Roshi, my head, my head. ويؤمر إلهنغر, and he said to the lad, Shaehu Elohim mo, lift thou him to his mother. Wayeshaehu, and he lifted him. Wayaviehu Elohim mo, and he brought him to his mother. Wayethab alabirkaha adahathoraim, and he sat upon her knees until the noontime. Wayamot, and he died. Watal watashakivehu, and she went up, and she caused him to lie. Alamitath Ishaha Elohim, upon the bed of the man of the God. Watisgorabado wateshe, and she shut behind him, and she went out. Watiqrah Elishah, and she called to her man. Watomer shilhanahli ehad minhangarim, send thou now for me one from the lads. Wa'ahath hathornoth, and one of the donkeys, she donkeys. Warusha Adaisha Elohim, and I would run as far as the man of the God. Wathuva, and I would return. Wayomer, and he said, Madua at Holech elai wahayom. Why art thou one going to him today? Lo hodeth, lo Shabbat. It is not the new moon, and it is not the Shabbat. Watomer shalom, and she said, peace. Watahabosh haton, and she saddled the she-donkey. Watomer el, and she said to her lad, Nahagawalech, drive thou and go thou. Al ta'athar li lirkob. Don't restrain for me to ride. Ki imha marati lach, except that I should say to thee. Watelch, and she went. Watavo Elisha Elohim, and she came to the man of the God, Elahar HaKarmel, to Mount Carmel. Wayahi Kerot Isha Elohim Hotah min neged. And it was, as the man of the gods seeing her from opposite, Wayomer el Gehazi Nagaro. Also he said to Gehazi, his lad, Hinne Hashunamit Halad. Behold, this Shunamit. Ata Rushana Liqratah. Now, run thou now to meet her. Wehmoralah, and thou shalt say to her, Hashalom lach, Hashalom leishek, Hashalom layalad. Is it peace for thee? Is it peace for thy man? Is it peace for the boy? What omer shalom? And she said, peace. What tavo Elisha Elohim? And she came to the man of the God, Elahahar, to the mountain. What tahazak baragalai? And she clasped in his feet. Why yigasha Gehazi lehodapah? And Gehazi drew near to thrust her aside. Wayomer Isha Elohim Harapelah Ki Napashah Maralah Wayahweh Elim Mimeni Welo Higidali. And the man of the God said, relax thou for her soul is bitter to her, and Yahweh hath hidden from me, and hath not told to me. Watomer Hashalati ben Mehedoni. And she said, is it that I asked a son from my Lord? Haloha marti loha tashele oti. Is it not that I said, thou shalt not mislead me? Wayomer Gehazi Hagor Motanecha. And he said to Gehazi, gird thou thy loins, Wakahamisha anati Bayadaka walek, and take my staff in thy hand, and go. Ki timatha ish lohatabarakanu. As thou find a man, thou shalt not bless him. Wikiyabarakakaish lohataranenu. And if a man bless thee, thou shalt not respond to him or answer him. Washamata misha'anati ala pnei hanahar, and thou shalt set my staff upon the face of the lad. Watomarehim hanahar, and the woman of the lad said, Hayya Yahweh, wehena peshaka, im azabaka, as Yahweh liveth, and as thy soul liveth, if I should forsake thee. Wayaqom, wayelek acharaha, and he arose, and he went after her. Gehazi avar lipnehem, and Gehazi passed on before them. Wayashem etaham mishe'eneth al pnei hanahar, and he set the staff upon the faces of the lad. When qul, when qashav, and there was not a voice, and there was not attentiveness. Wayathob liqrahato, and he returned to meet him. Wayaged lo le'amor, and he told to him, saying, Lo heqith hanahar, the lad hath not awaked. Wayavo Elisha habayatah, and Elisha came to the house. Wehine hanahar met, and behold, the lad was dead. Mushakab alamitato, one made to lie upon the bed, his bed. Wayavo, and he came. Wayisagor hadelet ba'adathanehem, and he shut the door behind the two of them. Wayitapallel ele Yahweh, and he prayed to Yahweh, or interceded to Yahweh. Wayal, wayishkaba ala hayeled, and he went up, and he lay down upon the lad. Wayashem piu ala piu, and he set his mouth upon his mouth. Wa'enau ala enau, and his eyes upon his eyes. W'chapau ala kapau, and his palms upon his palms. Wayigahara alau, and he crouched over him. Wayahum bashara hayaled, and the flesh of the boy became hot. Wayathob, and he returned. Wayelek babayit, and he walked in the house. Ahata henna, ahata henna, once to this and once to that. Wayal, wayigahara alau, and he went up, and he crouched over him. Wayazorer hanahar ad sheva pa'amim, and the lad sneezed as far as 7 times. Wayifaqah hanahar et einau, and the lad opened his eyes. Wayiqrah el Gehazi, and he called to Gehazi. Wayomer, and he said, Qrah et hashunamit hadot, call thou to this Shunamit. Wayiqraha, and he called her. Watavo elau, and she came to him. Wayomer shehivenech, and he said, Lift thou thy son. Watavo, and she went in. Watipula al ragalau, and she fell upon his feet. Watishtahu arshah, and she bowed down as to worship to the ground. Watishah etbanah, watesheh, and she lifted her son, and she went out. Wehelisha thab Gilgal, and Elisha returned to the Gilgal. وَهَرَّغَبْ بَارْش, and the famine was in the land. وَبْنِي حَنْبِيمْ يُوثَبِيمْ لَبَانَيْ, and the sons of the prophets were ones dwelling before his faces. وَيُمْرَ لِلنَّغَرُ, and he said to his lad, Shafot hasir hagdolah, set thou the pot, the big pot, Ubashel nazid, and boil thou a broth, Libane hanbim, for the sons of the prophets. Wayesh ehad el hashad lelak et horot, and one went out to the field for a gathering of luminous plants. Wayimtah gepen shad, and he found a vine of a field. Wayelak et mimenu pakuot shad meloh bigado, and he gathered from it gourds of a field, the fullness of his garment. Wayavoh, and he came. Wayafallah el sir hanazid, and he sliced up to the pot of the broth. Ki lo yada'u, for they knew not. Wayithaqu lahanashim lehakol, and they poured out for the men to eat. Wayahi kochalam mehanazid wehemma ta'aqu, and it was in their eating from the broth also they cried out, Wayomeru maut basir isha Elohim, and they said, Death in the pot, O man of the God. Welo yakalu lehekol, and they were not able to eat. Wayomer, and he said, Uqahu qemah, and take ye meal. Wayashlek el hasir, and he threw to the pot. Wayomer, and he said, Thaq la'am, pour thou out for the people. Wayohekelu, and let them eat. Welo hayadavar ra basir, and there was not an evil thing in the pot. Wehi shabah mib'al thalitha, and a man came from Baal Thalitha. Wayaveh leish ha-Elohim lechem bikurim esherim lechem sha'orim v'karamel b'thikalono, and he brought for the man of the God bread of first fruits, 20 breads of barley, and grain in his bag. Wayomer, and he said, Ten la'am v'yochelu, set thou for the people, and let them eat. Wayomer Masharato, and his servant said, Mah et tenether lipene meha'ish. What? I would give this before the faces of 100 men? Wayomer ten la'am v'yochelu, and he said, Give thou to the people, and let them eat. Ki ko ha'amar Yahweh akol v'hoter, because thus Yahweh hath said, Eat thou, and cause thou to remain. Wayiten lifnehem, and he gave before their faces. Wayohekalu, wayotiru, and they ate, and they caused to remain. Kidavar Yahweh, like the word of Yahweh.